Welcome to our MapUs Superuser course for customized subscribers. My name is Leah and I will walk you through the course where I will walk you through the functionalities of MapUs, teach you how to navigate the platform, and show you how to edit your survey. So today we're gonna go through the front page that you see here, and then we're basically gonna go through everything you see over here in the menu panel. So we're going to go through group management, which is the basic admin functions. And then we're going to go through our part module. And then we're going to go through manage survey, which is where you edit your survey and your survey information. And lastly, we're going to go through admin management with you. So before we get started, I just have a little bit of practical information. First off, at this point in time, you will have gotten your own MapUs platform, but for the sake of the Superuser course today, I will demonstrate everything in this demo platform that you see here. But try it out on your own, of course. Secondly, we have put in some exercises throughout this Superuser course where you will get a chance to try the things out that we walk through in practice. So take your time to do the exercises. This way you will get a lot more out of the Superuser course. So let's get started. So this is your front page. What the front page does is that it basically gives the respondent kind of like a preview of what type of universe they're about to enter. You can't press anything or anything like that on the front page, but you can move your cursor over the different competences and see what they are and see their descriptions and stuff like that. So basically the front page just gives the respondent a really good preview of what type of universe they're entering. Up here you have your survey title and your survey description. Both of these you can change yourself, and we will get back to how you do that a little bit later, but this is where it will show. Then we have this blue button right here. Basically, this is where you start the survey. The most intuitive way is, of course, to press start, and then you begin the survey. But there are another way of accessing the survey, and that is by pressing the little arrow over here, and then you can enter a PIN code. We will get back to how the PIN code works in just a little while, but it's just to tell you that there are two different ways of accessing the survey, either by pressing start or by entering a PIN code. Then what we have here are basically the visualizations of the front page. In this case, we have the digital competence areas and we have the wheel itself where you can see all the competences. You can decide yourself what visualizations you want on the front page, and we will get back to how you do this a little bit later. But this is usually what people have. At the bottom here, we have your footer. You can see what we have. We have our contact information and our website and stuff like that. Usually people use the footer to have some sort of company information. Use ours to get inspired, but yeah, it's up to you what you have down here. So now I'm gonna go through the basic admin functions with you guys, which are group creation and group administration. So groups are basically a really useful way of segmenting your data and working more purposefully with your data as well. So when you start to collect your answers, you will very often get quite a large respondent pool. And groups are a really useful way to segment these respondents into smaller groupings and make it all a bit more comprehensible and work more purposefully with those groups. So for example, if you have different departments, it could be useful to create groups for each department. If you want to measure your employees at different points in time, you could make a group, one for spring and one for fall, for example. Yeah, so basically groups are just a really useful way of segmenting your data and working more purposefully with it in your reporting. So first off, I'm going to show you how to create a group. And you can do that by pressing create group over here. And then this little box pops up. Here you will be asked to give the group a title and give the group a private note. So in this case, we're gonna call it Group Tester 1. You can also give it a private note. You don't have to, it won't be visible to the audience, but if you want to, you can do that. When you're ready, you just press create group session here, and then this box pops up. So this is where the pin code comes in. As you see, you have a link down here and you have the pin code here. The pin code and the link to survey are basically just the two different ways of accessing the survey. The most intuitive way and the most used way is usually just to copy this link and then send it out to the respondents that you want belonging to this group. If you for some reason would like them to type in a pin code instead, this could be if you don't know the email addresses of all the people you want to belong to this group. For example, if you're hosting a workshop or something like that, then you can give the respondents a pin code instead, and then they can access the survey and automatically belong to this group as well. So the link to survey and the pin code, just two different ways of accessing the survey. At the bottom here, you have the result link for this group. So this is the link to the aggregated result of all the respondents in this specific group session that you just created. Yeah. So now I will move on to show you what you can do with the groups and then how you can administer the groups. And you do that over here by pressing view groups. And then you will get this page. So this is the overview of all the groups on your portal. You will of course have some other ones. These are demo groups, but this is where you can see the entire overview of all your groups on the portal. Over here to the right, you can see how many users are in the different groups, and you can also go directly to this group's results from here. Up here, you can also create new groups. You don't have to do it through the menu panel. You can also do it by pressing new group up here. We're just gonna try and click a group, and then I'll show you how you administer the groups. So if you press here, you can see the title of the group. You can change the title of the group. You can give the group a description. You can see the owner of the group. The owner of the group will usually be the person who made the group. So yeah, but here you can see and also change the owner. Here you see the pin code. You can change the pin code if you want to. And quite importantly, here you can change the setting of whether you want the group to be inactive or active. When the group is active, it allows new respondents to take the survey in that group. When it's inactive, it does not allow new respondents. The group doesn't get deleted when it's inactive or anything. It just doesn't let in new respondents. So this is where you change that. Below this, we have these two custom fields. So we have the custom survey welcome to group, and then we have the custom result email. So the MapUs platform is built in such a way that we do have a general survey welcome message in place and a general result email in place. And you can, as survey builders, you can change both of the general messages as well. But in here, you can override the general messages. This means that if you have some specific information for specific groups, if you want management to get a specific welcome message, you can type in the welcome message here and it will override the general one. And the same thing for the result email. If you don't type in anything here, the group will just get the general welcome message and the general result mail. But here you can override it. Down here, you have the link to the report. So this is what you also saw before. This is just the link for the aggregated results of all the respondents in these specific groups. And below that, you have the direct link to the questionnaire of this group. So this is the link that you use when you want to administer the survey and when you want the respondents to take the survey. Lastly, you can search for specific users in the specific groups. Now there are no respondents, but when you have respondents in the group, you will be able to search for them here. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to find specific users and administer specific users on your platform. You do that by pressing Find User over here. And then you get this white search bar. So this is where you can find all the respondents on your entire platform. Usually you will find them by name or email. Let's just take respondent 12, for example, and then you will get this. So here you can see their name, you can see their email, and you can also move the respondents to different groups. So if you have a respondent that you want to belong to another group, you can move them in here. This is also where you find the report link for that specific respondent and the results for that specific respondent. Down here, we have the direct link to that respondent's questionnaire. So everything in MapUs is link-based. And when a user starts the survey, it will automatically create a unique URL link for that specific user and for them taking the survey. If the respondent for some reason can't finish the survey in one sitting, it's very important that they save this questionnaire link, and then when they want to finish the survey later on, they just use that exact same link, and then it will automatically remember where they came from, and then they can just continue the survey from where they stopped. If the users for some reason forget to save the link or something like that, then you will always be able to find that specific user's questionnaire link here and send it to them. But yeah, this is the link for the questionnaire itself for that specific user. And down here you can see what group that specific user belongs to as well. And if you change it up here, of course it will change at the bottom as well. Welcome back. Now I will proceed with walking you through the MapUs report module, which you access over here through Advanced Report. So we press this, and then you will get your access to the report module. So what you see here is the page where you can create all of your reports. This is where you create both baseline and benchmark reports. So up here we have the link for that specific report. When you press View Report, it will open in a new tab. And then here you, for example, see the entire report for all the respondents in the demo version, because we haven't segmented the data yet. Over here you can see the preview of the report. This preview is updated in real time, which means when you make changes to the components, for example, you don't want to show in resources or something like that, the preview will automatically change. So this is like a mini version of your report. Here we have the select components. So the components is where you choose what you want shown in your report. So this is basically the visualizations of the report. you can choose between the list that we have here. There are already some default things, some default components added, but you can choose yourself what you want shown here. So I want the total score. Yeah, we're gonna, for example, take something like this. I'm gonna take individual scores as well. Here you can also include competences and specific questions. When you include specific competences, for example, let's take storage and information, then they will get their own page in the report. You will see how this works in just a little while, but they will get their own page. And it's the same with the question. If you have specific questions you want included in the report, they will also get their own page. Down here we have the data set. So the data set is basically where you choose what information you want and what data you want in your report. The components choose the visualizations, the data choose the specific data that you want the report to be built on. So here you can give it a data set title. We'll just call it, for the sake of this, we'll call it demo group. We'll call it demo group 1. You can give it a data set color. The color set is just basic RGB coding. You can Google it. So if you want different colors, you just use RGB code. Here you can choose specific users. If you want to make reports on specific users, you can select specific groups. So we're, for example, gonna do management spring for now. Here you can select them by job type, gender, age, etc. What you see out here, the one with the little tick, that is all filterable questions. So the filterable questions are basically, that's questions you can use in the report module. When we get to question building, you will be able to select yourself what questions you want to be filterable. When you select a question to be filterable, it will appear here and you will be able to use it in reporting. This is usually background questions such as, for example, job type, gender, age, etc. All other questions should not be set to filterable. Here you have minimum, maximum response time. You can also filter it by dates. Yeah, whatever you want. It's very important to remember that your report is dynamic, which means that when we press here, view report, now we have opened a report in a different tab. This report, until you lock the report link that you have here will be dynamic and it will be dependent on the report module that you see here. This means that every time you make changes in the report module, the report will also update. So for example, you see here we have the report for demo group 1. And you see the menu panel over here. This is all the components that we chose just before. And now I'm going to try and we're just going to add a question, for example. So we're going to add the terms and conditions. You wouldn't usually do that in reporting, but we're going to do that for now. And we're going to go here, just going to update it. And then you can see the demo report now, it updated. You can see the question, terms and condition over here. So until you lock the report will be dynamic. So when the link is open, it will be dependent on the report module that you have here. So how to lock a report? The easiest way to lock a report is to just press new report up here in the corner. We're going to press new report. And then it just kind of reloads the page. It looks quite similar, but what you've done now is that you have locked the old report, which means that this we have here is no longer dependent on the report module. And now you have logged this report. So if we try and update, nothing happens. The report is now locked, which also means that the report module has now generated a new report link. So if you press view report here now, this is the new report, and until you unlock this one will now be dependent on the report module here, and this will be the dynamic one. So that is how you lock reports. You can also save your reports as PDFs, and you can print your report. You do that by going into the report, and then you press the little print image up here. When you do that, it will just generate the graphics. And then here, for example, you can choose if you want to print it, or you can save it as a PDF if you want to. This is how it will look like if you choose to print it. This is also what it will look like if you choose to save it as a PDF. So yeah, but you will always be able to access all the reports through the links. Of course, when you save the reports as PDF, the reports will no longer be interactive. So now I'm just going to walk you through a specific report and show you how that works. So here you have your report front page. And over here in the About box, you can see the name of the report. You can see how many respondents there are in this report. You can see from what time to what time this report has been collected, or the respondents has filled out the survey. And then you can see the average response time for this report or this group as well. So what's really important, or what's really interesting about the reports, are that all of our reports are interactive. That means that everything in the reports are usually clickable. So for example, let's try, we'll just press the competence area information, and then a long box pops up. So here you kind of get an elaboration on that specific competence area. So up here you see this is the overall score of the competence area information for this specific group. Down here you can see the description of their score. The triangle here is your taxonomy. So here you can see where this specific group lies on the taxonomy and see the description of it. Down here you can see the group distribution for, in this case, information. Down here you can see the user score. And then lastly down here we have aspects of information. Aspects of information can be interesting because everything you see inside the wheel here are all the questions that are in this specific competence area. So this is all the questions within the competence area information. And these questions are also clickable. So let's try and click a question. We chose file formats. And in here you will be able to see the response distribution for that specific question, which is really interesting. And you can also press here and then you can view the question and stuff like that. And then you can, for example, see here. Your cursor always also makes it interactive, so you can put your cursor over the different bars usually, and then you can see a little bit more information and you can see the exact percentages of stuff. Yeah. The same thing counts with normal, or like the primary competences, which are the ones that you see inside the wheel. It's kind of the same principle. Here you have the overall score, stuff like that. The only difference between the competence areas and the competences are that if you go all the way to the bottom here, you have your resources. So here you can see the specific resources related to that specific competence. We will get back to how you use resources later on, but this is just to show you that here you can see the specific resources connected to that specific competence. And resources are a really useful way to go from result to action and improvement within a specific competence. Yeah. So Over here, we have the menu panel. I'm gonna like rather quickly go through some of these. The easiest way to learn the report module and learn how to do reporting is just to play around with it a little bit, because it is quite extensive, and you can do a lot with it. So the easiest way is for you to play around with it a little bit yourself. So I'm gonna go through the menu panel like quite quickly, but yeah, I will show. So this is your report front page. Of course, these are the components we chose. If you choose other components, it will be a different menu panel. Here you can see the total score. This is the summative evaluation of the score across all the competences and questions within this report. You can see the description of the score. Here you can see the top 3. So the top 3 are the 3 competences with the highest score within this report. And under that, you can see the one called recommendation. So recommendation are the one with the 3 lowest scores, and where this report or this group would need most improvement. Then we have the one called analyzer. Analyzer is really interesting because the analyzer is it's a small report within the report. And what you can use analyzer for, and we will get back to this because there is a place in when you edit your competences where you can benchmark results. And this is where analyzer comes in. So the analyzer is basically just an interactive tool where you can investigate data by segments and create like smaller analysis, and respondents are segmented based on gathered information. So you can see them here. So for example, you can choose to segment your respondents here, either by job type, gender, age, whatever you chose. You can also set the analyzer settings. So the analyzer is a small report within your actual report. Then we have the competence overview. So here you have the list that provides you an overview of all the competences, the average score, and the distribution of users grouped by their score. So you see that here, for example. It's quite a long list. Play around with it. And you can press here for more details as well, and then you will get an elaborated version. Then you can see the individual user score, which is like this. And down here is the specific competence that we chose. You remember we chose 2 specific competences. We chose storage and information, and they get their own page. So storage now, for example, has its very own page within the report. So this is just a bigger version of when I pressed the competence inside the wheel. And lastly, we have the question, and here you can see the response distribution as well. So that's how reporting works, and how you can use reporting. Welcome back. Now you have seen a general baseline report, which is a report with only one data set. I will now proceed with showing you how to do a benchmark report, which is a report where you can compare 2 or more data sets. So it's the same principle. You do it in the same report module. Just gonna close down the old report up here. But what we're gonna do now is that we are gonna add a new data set. So now we have 2 data sets. So what we're gonna do is like we're just gonna choose like what groups or what data we want to compare. So the first one we're gonna call demo group 1, and the second one we're gonna call demo group 2. In here you can also set the data set color for them. We have some built-in codes, but use RGB code. Remember RGB code, but we're just gonna set different colors. And just for the simplicity of it, we're gonna choose two groups. So we're gonna compare management spring with, in the demo group 2, we're gonna choose management fall. Yeah. So just for the simplicity, we're gonna do these two groups. It's important to note that when you make a baseline report, as soon as you add a new data set, the components will also change. So when making baseline reports, you only have these 3 components available. And that's just because you don't really need anything other than that. So don't get confused when some of the components go away. That is what automatically happens when you choose or when you add a new data set. It's the same thing that applies. Here you can also take specific competences or include specific questions if you want to. So let's see. We're just gonna do, you see we have the preview here. Just gonna press new report, and then we have the new report here. So here you can see the comparison report of these two groups that we just chose demo group 1, demo group 2. The comparison report allows you to compare and evaluate the survey results across multiple series of respondents. And you can also compare specific users. You can compare two groups that are segmented of different points and dates and time and stuff like that. So play around with the benchmark report as well, because it does have a lot of potential. And over here, it's the same principle. You can see what components you have. You can see all of those over here in the menu panel. We have the competence overview, where you have the list of all the competences, the average score and stuff like that. The difference is that now you have 2 scores where you can compare them. You can press more detail here, and then you can see exactly what the difference is between the 2 groups and stuff like that. You can see the question overview here as well. So this is just the overview of all the questions in the survey. Here we have the specific competence that we added just before, and here we have the specific question that we had before. So, and it's the same thing. When you want to lock a benchmark report, you press new report, and then you lock the old report link, and it will automatically generate a new one up here. So when making benchmark reports, it's important to note that in principle, you can benchmark as many data sets as you want to. You can benchmark 100 data sets if that is what you like. But for the simplicity and for the simplicity of it, we usually recommend that you don't benchmark too many groups or like too many data sets. Like 4 or 5 could be fine, but try to keep it simple, because you will kind of lose a good overview if you add too many data sets. But yeah, it's up to you, of course. But that's how you do a benchmark report. Welcome back. Now I will walk you through all the survey builder functionalities where you can edit your survey as you like. With your customized subscription, you are granted the access we call Survey Builder. This is the highest possible access, and it gives you a series of permissions that allows you to edit your survey questions, your competences, your taxonomy, resources, and so on. This is all administered in here under Manage Survey. So we're gonna press here. And this is where you edit everything, all the content of your survey. So we're gonna go through the basic survey settings. We're gonna go through question building, competence building, taxonomy, and lastly, we're gonna go through the resources. But before we move on, the practical aspects of survey building. We do have some general rules of thumb in MapUs survey building, because as survey builders, you do have a lot of power. Also a lot of power to mess things up. So first of all, delete with caution. Once something is deleted, we cannot retrieve it for you again. We have a safety mechanism in place, and I will show you a little bit later how that works. So you can't accidentally delete something, but just be mindful of how you delete. We cannot retrieve it again once it's deleted. Second of all, rely on the tooltips for help. You see the little eyes here. You find them all over the platform. And if you're in doubt about anything, rely on the little tooltips. They are a great help. There are little descriptions of what you should type in the different places and stuff like that. So if you're in doubt, rely on the tooltips. Lastly, when adding new questions and or competences, it can sometimes be a good idea to clone existing ones instead of building new ones from scratch. This way, you kind of make sure that all the correct things are filled out, and then you can just make your changes and your edits in the clone. You're always welcome to, of course, build your own questions and your own competences from scratch if that is what you want, but it can just sometimes be easier to clone the existing ones and make the edits in the clones. So let's begin with the general survey settings. So that is what you see here. And as you see, there are two different tabs. We have the basic tab and the advanced tab. And in the basic tab is where you can set your survey title. It's where you can set your survey description. It's also here you set the language, and it's here you set the default group. So this is the group which respondents will automatically belong to if you do not give them a specific group link or PIN code. And there's already a pre-existing default group implemented for you, but it's here that you can change this default group if you want to. And you can basically change, you can choose whatever group you want to set as the default group. This is where you change it. Lastly, in the basic tab here, you need to set your contact person. The contact person is quite important to fill out because the one you set as a contact person is regarded as your data controller. You can either choose a specific person in your organization, or you can just set your entire organization as the data controller or the contact person. Completely up to you. But this is where you write the name, and afterwards you write the email. It's important to write it the way that you see it here. So these little ticks that you see before and after the email address, they're important to include. Don't delete those. Simply put the email address in between them. Let's go to the advanced tab. The advanced tab here, you can set a Google tracking ID if you want to. This is also where you can change the result email. It's a little important that you remember to change this because it automatically has MapUs as the sender, and of course you would like yourself as the sender, so just remember to change the email results. This is simple HTML coding. Yeah. Below that, this is where you set the default welcome message. Here you can just write whatever you want. You can also add media, you can add links if you want to. So this is where you set the default welcome message. Lastly, we have the custom footer. So what I showed you before, I showed you when we went through the front page, I showed through the footer. You can change the information in the footer and then you can get your own information. So I have just made a test for you and I have put in some information here. So I've just written test organization, test read 1, Denmark. So that works fine. I'm gonna go through the front page and then you can see here. So instead of the content we had in the footer before, now the things that I wrote right now, that has overridden the original content. So this is where you customize the content that you want in the footer. People usually have like company information or contact information, And if you want something a little bit more comprehensive, for example, something that looks like ours or anything, or your logo or a clickable website, you can use simple HTML coding. You are, of course, also always welcome to contact us for help, and we will always help you out. So that was the general survey settings. Now I will walk you through how you edit questions and create new ones in our question editor. You do that over here by pressing the questions in the menu panel. So here you have the overview of all your questions in your questionnaire. It's an ordered list of questions, and all the questions are managed in here. So to the left over here, the numbers you see here on top, is the order that the questions are in. The pre-existing questions are in tens, as you see, 50, 60, 70, 80, and so on. And this is simply to make it easier for you when you add new questions, because then you don't have to change the entire order every time you add a new question. So the tens are simply to make it easier for you. Of course, it's in descending order, so the lower the number it has, the higher in the questionnaire it will come. To the right, you can see what competences the questions are related to. For example, you can see that storage options are related to 3 competences. This is just to give you an overview of what competences they're related to. You can see those in here. You will also be able to see it in more detail when we go into the question. The last thing I'm going to show you before we're going to go through the specific questions are the filterable questions that I talked about in the report module. So if we'll go to the end here, you can see all the questions here that has this little funnel. When the question has a funnel, it means that it is filterable in results, and that is filterable in the reports. So this is just how you identify whether a question is filterable or not. So now I'm going to go through question editing with you guys, and I think the easiest way to do it is to just clone a question and try and do it. So we're just going to go into file formats. Why not? I'm going to click the question, and this is where all the editing happens. So we're just going to clone the question. You do that by pressing the little arrow over here. Then you press clone question. It asks you whether you are sure. Say OK. And now it has cloned the question. So you can see here, now it has immediately made a clone of the file formats question. So we're going to press that. And then you can see we have all these different tabs here. So we're going to go through all the tabs. And when you are editing your questions or adding new ones, you can always press the preview button, and then you will see exactly how the question looks like in action, or for what you say. But then you can always see how the layout will look like. So use the preview button, it's really helpful. Anyway, so in the basic tab, here you can change the order. You can change where in the survey a question appears. All questions are labeled with a number, which dictates their place in the order of questions. Simply change the number and then you change the placement. So for example, in this case, we don't want it to be 70 because then it's the same as the cloned one. So we want it to be 71, for example. Here you can also give it a title. The title given to a question appears both on the question and in the question table to the left when answering the survey, as well as in the results and the report generator. Give your question a title that makes sense to users in both the backend and front end of your platform, because then you make sure that everybody collectively understands. So for the sake of this, we're just going to call it test question, right? For example. Down here is where you edit the actual text part of the question. The content will usually be the main question or statement, and sub-content can be like an example or an explanation to help your user understand the question. The bottom content is optional, but it's typically used to elaborate on how the user should think about the question, for example. So you can, for example, see we have text in both content and sub-content, which looks, for example, like this. If you write something here, we'll just write test, press the preview button, just saved, press the preview, and then you can see the bottom comes here. So that is how it works in the basic tab. When editing your content, you can use, now it's enabled here, but if you see here, you can press enable formatter. And here you can then format the content to your liking. Just like in regular typing programs, you can also insert quotes, tables, and media. And embedding media, I'm going to explain to you how that works now. If you want to insert an image or a video as part of your question, you can easily do that. You do that with an embedded code. So this means that your media, like either whether it's pictures, whether it's PDF files, links, videos, so on, they has to be hosted somewhere. For a video, that could, for example, be on YouTube or like a similar site for images. And to embed the media, for example, to embed video, you click the play button, which is this one in the text formatter, and then you will just be asked to insert the source. Here you simply insert the URL of the video that you want to insert. The same thing applies if you want to do links. You simply put in the URL. So this is, for example, if you want to embed PDFs or anything like that, or is it like other links if you want to redirect people to a specific website or anything, you do that by pressing the little link thing over here. Embedding images are a little bit different. So in most cases, you can simply just copy the image directly into the question. If that doesn't work for some reason, then you copy the HTML code from whatever site you're using to host the image. Then you go to your content, and then you simply disable the formatter and insert the code bit, and then the picture should appear. But most often than not, you can just copy it into the question. But it is really important that the pictures are not hosted locally on your computer. It has to be hosted somewhere, so it has a URL or an HTML code of some sort. So that's how you do it. Let's move on to the settings tab. So in the settings format, first of all, this is where you can choose whether a question is filterable or not. If it's filterable, it becomes a variable that you can filter your data on when generating reports. Usually, filter questions are used to gather like background information on your data. So common filter questions would be things like age, gender, department, so on. So you do that here. Right now it's disabled because it doesn't make sense to have the test question as a filterable question. Here you can choose whether or not you want the question to be logged. If you log a question, the respondents won't be able to go back and change their answer once they've clicked on an option. Depending on your project, there can be different pros and cons in doing this, but if you're doing a self-assessment, we'd usually recommend leaving the questions unlocked because this allows the respondents to change their answers upon further reflection. But this is where you log it. So next to the log question, you can set a correct score. So this field is only relevant if you want the respondent to know if there's a right or wrong answer to the question. If so, then input the score that equals a correct answer. So a tip for this is that this setting is usually used together with the option score setting on each option. We'll go through that in a minute. But just note that the correct score is the correct total score, which means that if a respondent can select multiple answers on a question, the total score should be distributed evenly between the options. So for example, if you set the total score to 100 and the question requires the respondent to select two right options, both of them should be scored at 50. So that is how the correct score works. So below this, we have the option help text. This setting lets you input text in the options section to help the respondent answer the questions validly. So this could, for example, be choose two of the following options or something like that. Next to this, we have the minimum and maximum selectable options. And here you can choose how many options a respondent is able to select on a given question. On regular self-assessment questions on statements about like ability, both minimum and maximum would usually be 1. But you might want to have question where it makes sense for the respondent to be able to select multiple answers. So this is just where you select how many options they're allowed to choose on that given question. Below that, we have the layout of options. So this setting lets you choose from several templates for how you want the options to a given questions laid out. So just try them out and then use the preview function, and then you can figure out what works best for you. So we're just going to try one of them. So we're going to do wrappable boxes, for example, instead. I'm going to preview. And now it instead looks like this. So the layout options, try them out, try the different templates, see what you like the best, and then it should work fine. The maximum width of all options determines the maximum width of all the options in pixels layout-wise. So this is where you can change that. Besides this, we have the auto confirm. So this setting lets you choose whether respondents are automatically directed to the next question when they have given their answer, or whether they need to manually confirm that they've answered and are ready to move on. So if you set it to automatic, as soon as a person chooses one of the options, they go straight to the next question. If you have the manual confirmation, they have to press a button to move on to the next question. So that is simply what this does. Then we have the display timer setting. So if you want to time your respondents on how long they take to answer a question and make the timer visible to them, you can activate this timer. Besides this, we have the end survey setting. If a given question, for example, the test question we're on now, needs to be the end of the survey, you can activate this setting here. The last question in the general order will automatically have this setting turned on, but maybe you would want a different question to be the last one for like a specific group or something, or some respondents, and then this is where this setting might come in handy. A little tip is that this setting is often used in combination with the jump to question setting in the options advanced tab. Now we're going to move on to the options tab. So this is the options tab. And as you see in the options tab, we have two mini tabs. So we have a basic tab and an advanced tab in the options tab. So we're going to go through the basic one first. Here you can give it an option title. This is the main descriptor of the option, yes, no, always, etc. Besides that, you have the option help text. You can use the help text if you need to elaborate on an option to make sure the respondent understands the selection. And below that, you set the order. if you don't put anything here, the options will just be listed in the order in which they appear in the editor. So if you if you just didn't fill out any of these, the top one will automatically be the top option and so on. Otherwise, the option with the lowest number will be listed first. Here is also where you can set the option score. This setting determines the score a respondent will get from selecting a given option. In the original MapUs framework, the digital competence wheel, each option on the answering scale is given a score between 0 and 100. And a high score impacts the final overall digital competence score more positively. You can also give options a negative score, which would impact the total score negatively. This makes sense if you're working with questions that have directly wrong answers, as opposed to less right, good, strong answers. So in self-assessment, it wouldn't normally make sense to set any negative scores. A little tip is when used together with the correct score setting, you can create actual test questions where the respondent is told whether they answered right or wrong. So this is actually a really cool feature if you use those two combined. Note that scores do not make sense on filter questions. So unless you're filtering on something different than neutral background variables like age, gender, title, etc., then the option score does not make sense. Besides the option score, we have the add icon. So if you want to add like a visual to go with the option, in this case we have stars, but you can choose yourself which icon you want. MapUs is connected to the icon database called Font Awesome, and you have access to their selection of like, I think they have over 1,500 icons to choose between. And all you need to do is go to fontawesome.com, find the icon you want, and then copy the icon key, for example, FAS, FA/star, and then you insert it into MapUs right here. And then it should change the icon. So you can choose what icon you want yourself. Moving along to the Advanced tab, go through here. Here you can set the responsive width. So the responsive width is just, you can set it with Bootstrap grid layout if you want to. Then you can also add a text response. This setting lets you add a text field in the options so that the respondent answers by typing. It's usually used if you want to include an other option or perhaps wants respondent to describe something in their answer. A tip is that it does not work with the rating option layout. If you want the rating option layout and you want respondents to be able to elaborate on their answer on a rating question, you just create a new question like directly following the rating one, and then they can type here. Then you also need to note that whatever text respondent input will be stored as data. To avoid any troubles regarding storage of personal data, please be mindful of how you use this function. Then we have image URL. If you want to add an image to an option, you can simply just take the image URL and from whatever site you're using to host it, and then you insert the URL in this field, and then the image should appear. Then we have the jump to question. In some cases, you might want different groups of respondents to be presented with different versions of your survey depending on their answers. So an example could be if you have a specific section of your survey which is only relevant to some and not all of your respondents. If they get a certain answer on a certain question, this setting activates a jump function on this option which directs respondents to the next question you deem relevant to them. So here you can choose between all the questions in the entire row of questions. And then if someone chooses a specific option within a question, you can make them jump to a specific question. Lastly, you can type in feedback. If you want respondents to receive feedback, if they select a certain option, for example, good job or wrong answer or try again or something, you can use this setting and input whatever feedback you would like. Lastly, I'm going to show you related competences. So if we press the related competences tab, this is where you control which competences a given question is related to. So which competence scores are affected by the answer on a given question. All you have to do is choose the competence in the white search bar. So you can see here that because this is a clone, it will of course have the same competences as the one we cloned. But here we, for example, have information, production, storage, production and sharing, and knowledge. So these are all the competences that are related to this specific question. And you can choose yourself which competences you want this question to be related to. The last thing I'm going to show you in question building is the safety mechanism in regarding deletion. So deleting a question, you press the little arrow over here, and this is both where you clone the question and it's also where you can delete one. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the test question that we just made. What you do is you press delete, and then the safety mechanism is that you actually have to type in delete if you really want to delete it. So it's quite a literal safety mechanism. So we're gonna write delete, we're gonna press OK, and now the question is deleted. So still be mindful of how you delete, but there is a safety mechanism in place. So that was question building. Welcome back. Now you've seen how question building works, and I will now walk you through our competence editor. So the competence editor or competence management you find under competences in the menu panel, and then you will get to this page. So on this page you see the entire overview of all the competences that are in your portal and in your survey. And as you can see, all the competences are divided into groups, and each group with its own level. So, for example, digital competence areas here, this is a group on its own. That group has level 2. The digital competences down here, this is also a group on its own. It's a group with quite a lot of competence in it, but this is set to level 3. I will get back to how the levels work in just a little bit. Up here in the corner, you have this little box that says competence groups. And this is where you have the entire list of all the competence groups that are in your portal. And this is also where you add new groups by pressing add new group. So let's just try and press one of the groups, and then you can see how it works. So we'll press digital competence areas here. And here you can see that you can give it a title. You can also change the title of this one if you want to. You set it to whether it's primary competence or whether it's not a primary competence. We'll also get back to how that works with the primary competences. And this is also where you set the level. And here you can also give it a description of the competence types. So that's how that works. So you can group your competences and competence areas, which will be reflected on your result page and on your front page as well. So I'll just show you how it will be reflected on the front page, for example. If we go here, you can see that the way that you group your competences will be reflected on this page. And either it will be reflected inside the wheel, or it will be reflected outside the wheel, or not reflected at all. So let's go back and I will just explain to you how it works. So what you do is you choose the group of competences which you want shown inside the wheel itself. These you set as your primary competences. So this means that, for example, what you see here, this list of competences that we have in this group, the ones called digital competences, they're all set as primary competences. And that means that all the competences that are in this group will be reflected inside the wheel on the front page and on the result page. The level you give these competences kind of becomes the organizing principle of how you work with all the other competences. So this means that all the competence groups that you set above the level of the group of your primary competences, so in this case level 3, they will be shown on the front page and the result page, but outside the wheel. So in this case, it is the digital competence areas. They're set at level 2. And the digital competence areas were the ones that you saw outside the wheel, to the left of the wheel on the front page. On the contrary, all competence groups that you set below the level of the primary competences, in this case, everything below level 3, will be invisible to the users. So these competences and competence groups will not be reflected anywhere, but you will still be able to use them in your reporting as administrators. So you don't have to set the primary competences at level 3. You can set it at whatever level you want. You set it at level 5, level 10, that's completely up to you. But the important thing to remember is that everything above the level of your primary competences shown on the wheel, everything below the level of your primary competences will not be shown on front page or the result page. So now I'm just going to show you how to add a new competence group, and then we'll just see how that works. So we'll press add new group over here, and then we'll just give it a title. We'll call it test group. And then you choose whether or not you want that group to be primary or not. For the sake of this, we're just going to choose it as not primary. Then you give it a level. So we're going to give it level 1. And down here you can add a description to the competence type if you want to. That description will just be shown right underneath the title of the competence area. But yeah, so we'll just press here, and now it should have added the competence group. The competence group won't be shown on the overview here until you start adding competences to it. But you can still see it over here. So you can see that the group we just created, called test group, is now reflected in the drop-down menu up here. Now we'll move on to show you how you edit the competences and also how you connect it to a competence group. In this case, we will make it appear on the front page, and you can see how that works. So we're just going to clone, for example, search. I'm going to take that, we're going to clone it. I'm going to press OK. And then the clone is down here. So I am going to change the name of it just for the sake of this. Call it test competence. So what you can do here is that this is where you choose the competence type. So the competence type is what group you want the competence to belong to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to choose from the drop-down menu here, and we're going to choose the test group that we just created. I'm going to call it test competence. And because it's cloned, there will already be some information here. You can create a new competence from scratch if you want to. Otherwise, just clone the competences and remember to change the information in that competence that you just cloned. So here we're just going to call it test. You can choose what order you want it in. You can also choose what color you want to give your competence. Remember, it's basic RGB code for this as well. You can choose what icon you want for that competence. It's still connected to the Font Awesome database. And here you can also give it a competence description and relevance. So we're just gonna see how it works. So now it has saved. And as you can see now, the competence group that we just created before is now visible on this page because we just connected a competence to it. So because we set this test group to level 1, which means we set it above the level of our primary competences, the ones inside the wheel, this competence will be shown on the front page now and on the result page. So now, as you see, we have an entirely new group of competences that are shown on the front page and on the result page. If you had set it below 3, it wouldn't have turned up, but you would still be able to use it in reporting and the competence here would still be visible there. What you can also do with the competences, if you want to, is you can give it a benchmark score. So the benchmark score is related to the analyzer that I showed you in the report module. And I will just show you how you can use the benchmark score for competences in relation to the analyzer. So you can, for example, use this field if you have like a specific score that you would like to be the benchmark for specific competences. So we're going to do it with another competence because we don't have any data on the test competence. So we're just going to choose search, for example. And then we'll set the benchmark score to 50. For example, so when you set a score at 50 and go into the analyzer, you will be able to see that it now has added a benchmark bar at the top. So we'll just try it out and then you can see how it works. So we'll go into a report. We're just going to do a random report and we're going to use the analyzer. I'm going to press here, press the analyzer. And now you can see that it has the benchmark bar at the top. So you can see the green bar down here, which is the one representing search. That is the competence that we just put in the benchmark score on. You can see that it's green. And because it's green, that means that they have scored above the benchmark that you just set. You can also hold the cursor over, all the bars are gray because we haven't set any benchmarks for any of them. But when you do set benchmarks, they will get a color reflecting how well the respondents match the benchmark or not. So because this is green, as you can see, the score is 52.1. They have scored above the benchmark. And you can always see the color, the benchmark color scheme. You can see that up here. It's really cool if you have like specific benchmark scores in mind for specific competences, then you will be able to measure whether your respondents can match that benchmark or not, and like where they need to work on specific competences. So now we're just gonna go back. I'm gonna close this. And we're gonna go back to the competences here. So the last thing I'm going to show you in relation to competences are the related questions tab. So the related questions tab you find on all the competences. We're just going to choose search. And that tab is what you see up here. So if we press this tab, here you can see what questions are related to that specific competence. And this is also where you can choose whether or not you want different questions. You can add questions here, you can delete them, stuff like that. But this is where you see the entire overview of all the questions that are related to that specific competence. So on the right here, you see that all the questions are weight. They have a number here in relation to weight. And this number indicate how important each question is for that score on every competence. So if all questions weigh 100, for example, then all questions are equally important for the score for this specific competence. We recommend either just setting them all to 100, or you can also keep the scores of the pre-existing competences if you want to. When building a completely new survey framework from scratch, it's sometimes easier to just set them all to 100. But you can weight them if you want to. It's real cool if you know that there are some questions that are more important than others for the score of a specific competence, for example. That was competences. Welcome back. Now you've seen how the competences work, how they're related, and how you edit existing ones as well as add new ones. I will continue with walking you through the taxonomy and the resources. So the taxonomy and taxonomy management is what you see here. You press taxonomy in the menu panel and then you can manage all of it in here. So the taxonomy determines how respondents score on the competences. We have a pre-existing taxonomy, but you can either edit in ours or you can add your very own taxonomy. So I'll just quickly show you how you can do it. We'll just try and press one of the taxonomies here. So for example, digital professor, here you can choose what order you want them in. So the item with the lowest number will be in the top of the taxonomy, and the item with the lowest number will of course be in the bottom. Here we have the from score to score, and this is where you decide what the respondent score should be in a given place in the taxonomy. So in this case, if a respondent scores between 89 and 100, they will be in the digital professor of the taxonomy. This is also where you can give it a title and you can give it a description. So that is how you edit the taxonomy. So I will move on to the resources and the resource management, where you add and edit resources. You do that under here, under resources in the menu panel. I'm going to press here, and then you'll get this very long overview of already integrated resources in this case. But this is like the resource universe that we have here. So resources can be used for almost endless purposes. Basically, they're a great way of helping respondents to reflect and improve on their competences. So if you, for example, have some internal learning materials, you can integrate them as resources in the MapUs platform and make it like use them as a way for respondents to go from results to action on their actual competences. Typically, you will have a list of already integrated resources, as you, for example, see here. And this is just how our platforms are set up by default. And these resources are often a good point of departure. But in this editor, you can, of course, always create your very own learning universe as well by creating completely new types or new resources. You can also delete the existing resources if you want to, and then just create your own entire resource library from scratch. So I'm just gonna show you how to make a new type and how to make a new resource, and then the easiest way to get to know it is actually to just play around with it a little bit. So we'll create a new type. A new type is the one that you see here that has a bit of a brighter color. So we'll press new type, and here you'll give it a title. So we'll, for example, call it training. So if you have any training materials, you could have a type called training. Here you can give it a description. We'll call it test, for example. And here you can give it an order, you can give it a color, and you can give it an icon. For the simplicity of this, we're not going to do it, but it's just so you know that you can. And this is also where you can, if you had a resource type already, you can delete the resource type. So we'll just do like this, and hopefully it has added the new type. So we will go all the way to the bottom here. And then you can see that the resource type we just created has now been added to the bottom. So now we're just gonna connect a resource to it, and then we can see how that works. So we'll just do a resource, and when you do a new resource, you choose the type you want it to be connected to. So in this case, we're going to choose training, the one that we just made. And here you choose what competences you want that resource to be connected to. So all resources are connected to competences. You can also connect one resource to several competences, but the resources are to be used as learning material to make the respondent reflect and improve on the specific competences. So here you choose what competences you want to connect it to. You can choose as many as you want. Here you also give it a title. So in this case, we're going to call it test. You give it an icon. You can also give it a priority. The higher the priority, the closer to like the top of the resource it is. You can also give it a description, and you can also give it main content. So we're gonna do it in just a minute, but first I will just add the resource, and then you'll see. So now it has saved, and we'll go to the bottom down here. And then you can see that we added the resource. So the resource is now here, and it is added to the resource type that we just made before. So what is cool is that we have a title test, that's fine. Whatever you write in the basic content tab is what is shown on the front page of the resource. So for example, if we write test here, do like this, you can see that this is shown like on the front page of the resource. But if you fill out the main content tab that you see here, we'll just write this is a test, just for the fun of it. And we'll just press save. Then you make the resource clickable. You make the resource clickable, and here you can add more information. So when, for example, if you have an LMS system that you want to link specific resources to, or if you have like a learning video or like an assignment sheet in a PDF or anything like that, you do that in main content. You add all of this in the main content. And this is what makes resources really valuable, because you can integrate so much learning material that makes the respondent really reflect and improve on their competences. So that is how the resources work. Welcome back. Now you've seen how to edit your survey and how to edit your survey settings and your questions and competences, taxonomy, etc. The last thing I'm going to show you in this Superuser course is admin management. And you manage your admins over here in the menu by pressing Manage Admins. And then you get this overview. So this is the overview of all the admins on your platform. And over here you can see the type of admin access that they have. So we distinguish between 3 types of accesses. We have Survey Builder, which is you guys, and which are the highest access that you can get. And then we have the Super Admin, and we have the Admin. So the Admin, which is the lowest level, they do not have access to edit anything in the platform or anything like that. And they only have access to their own created groups. So the admins can create groups and they can use them in reporting, but they can only use and see their own created groups. The next step is the super admin. And the super admin is just the step above. The super admin can't edit anything in the platform either, but they have access to all created groups. So super admins can create groups, but they can also see all groups created, also the groups not created by themselves. The super admin can also add new admins, but you can only add new admins below your own level. So a super admin is able to add new admins, but not new super admins. The last and the highest level we have are you guys, and that is the survey builder access. And the survey builder access gives you access to pretty much everything. Here you can edit the survey, you can see all the groups, you can use all the groups for whatever you want, and you can add new super admins and new admins. You cannot add new survey builders. If you want new survey builders, you just need to contact us and then we will add them for you. So just for the fun of it, we're just going to try and add a new admin. I'm going to press new admin up here. Here you can give it a name. So we're just going to call it test 2. You can enter an email, and then here you choose what level you want to give them. And because you have the survey builder access, you can give them both super admin or admin access. Here you also choose whether or not you want, okay, so we're just going to choose admin. And here you choose as well whether you want the admin to be enabled or disabled. When the admin is disabled, the person will not be able to log in. And when it's enabled, they will be able to log in, of course. Here you can also find, oh, I'm sorry, it's teasing me a little bit now. Just try and, okay, just go to test 2 again. Okay, now it works. Sorry about that. Here you can also see what accessible groups this person has access to on the survey. You can see what survey they have access to. Usually you will, of course, only be able to find one survey, for example, because you only have, if you have several surveys connected to your platform, you will be able to see the entire list here. Lastly, we have the login magic link. So usually when logging in, you have to press the little login thing up here in the corner, type in your email address, and then you will get a link sent to your email address. However, if you use the login magic link, you simply just copy the link, copy paste it into a fan somewhere or a tab anywhere or something, and then you would get directly logged in as that admin. So if you want an easy gateway for the admin, you can just send them their magic login link and then they will just be directly logged in. And that's how admin management works. Thank you for participating in this Superuser course for customized subscribers. If you would like to learn more about the features of MapUs and how to navigate the platform, you can check out our knowledge base on mapus.io. And if you have any questions, you are always welcome to contact us. You can find the contact information for all of us on mapus.io as well. Thank you.